Hello, everybody. My name is Dana Mantilia, and I am the founder of Identity Protection Planning. And today I would like to give you some tips and really kind of focus on some thought starters for how you can get your organization more secure and protected from identity thieves, cyber criminals, and scammers. So I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see if we can do this. There we go. Here we go. Hooray. Okay. So like I mentioned, this is my name, Dana Mantilia, Identity Protection Planning. And just to give you a little history as to how I kind of got to where I am, a few years ago, probably about 3 or 4 years ago, I wanted to offer identity theft protection. And I came up with a product, got together with a software program in California, and the IDENTRON monitors credit, dark web scans, $1 million insurance policy if anything should happen, and a restoration center to contact if you do need some help with a situation. After that, we created a platform for other people that wanted to offer identity theft protection to their clients or to their employees. So they would get a co-branded website and they would then offer identity theft protection. And that's when I realized the need for education when it comes to all this stuff, because we really still are at the infancy stage of making sure that everybody is aware of protecting themselves and their companies and all that kind of stuff. So that was when, excuse me, I started with my videos, and I posted my very first educational video right here in the pink. It was the Rinsta versus the Finsta, which is the real Instagram account that kids have and their fake Instagram account that they have. That's their private account that they only share with their very close friends. So didn't really get a lot of love for my videos, but that's okay. And then I went and I created this one on synthetic identity using my daughter's American Girl dolls. And I got a few direct messages from people that they would say, hey, I love that video. I never really understood or knew about synthetic identity. So I thought I was kind of onto things. I may be explaining them in a way that people could actually wrap their head around. So then, as you probably may have seen some of my other videos, and I always try to make sure the videos are very focused and very on point. So that way somebody's going to walk away, they're going to remember what they heard. And if they ever get into one of those situations, they may remember, say, hey, I remember that when she was talking about that, Dana mentioned something about this. And at least maybe they'll pause and think before they are reacting. So I've done talks for all different kinds of companies. Here's a few of them. I do interview style videos with Medicare agents and financial advisors for them to share with their clients, and also do all different kinds of presentations. So what was happening was I was repeating myself. So I went and I took a course at Harvard University it was online. It was a cybersecurity and managing risk in an information age. And we studied some really big, serious cyber attacks and data breaches, as you can see here on the screen. And while we were going through all this, and I'm thinking to myself, these are huge, huge companies. They have robust IT departments, they have employee training, they have big budgets that they can combat the cyber attack, and fancy PR firms to deal with any kind of reputational damage that may have occurred. But what about the small and medium-sized businesses? What are they doing? Are they doing anything? So I went and I interviewed hundreds of small and medium-sized business owners. And these are some of the things that I kept hearing over and over. Oh, I back up everything to the cloud. I don't need to worry about anything. I have insurance for that. And now those two things. So backing up to the cloud, do you know where that actually is? Like, where is the data going? And I know it's in the cloud, but where is it actually being saved? And as far as the insurance, this is something you should look at your insurance policy for, because the computer may be covered by the insurance, but the data on the computer, that's not going to be covered by regular insurance. That's something you need to get cyber liability insurance for. So I'm not associated with a cyber liability company, but the next time you're reviewing your insurance with your insurance agent, I would recommend at least finding out a little bit more about how it can help you if you decide you want to get that coverage. A lot of people say, oh, I would just call the IT guy, no problem. Well, I think everybody should take a minute and look at what their agreement with their IT provider really, really says, because chances are it certainly doesn't say, hey, no problem, I'll be left holding the bag should you have a problem. Probably is going to mean you're going to be responsible for the actions. And most of the problems are caused by employees or human error. So I don't think it's going to going to be able to just get dumped onto the IT guy. A lot of people say they don't know. They don't know what they don't know, so they don't even know where to start. So they don't do anything. And this one I heard over and over again. I'm too small for anybody to want to hack me. And that's very, very untrue. So like I just mentioned, 95% of the cybersecurity breaches are due to human error. That's kind of crazy. That's a really big number. So we should probably start with trying to deal with some of that, right? And cyber criminals are targeting small and medium-sized businesses, and this is why. They know they have less sophisticated computer equipment. They don't have employee training really, and they don't have a big budget for cybersecurity. So they're the perfect target for a cyber attack. So emails, everybody's opening up emails all day long, and 94% of the malware is delivered via email. So 95% of the breaches are being caused by human error, and 94% of this malware is getting delivered through email. So if we just focus on the people and the emails, we would be off to a really, really good start. So that's something to think about, is how are we going to help people not be clicking on these emails? So how many actual small businesses are getting hacked? So around 20% of the companies are getting hacked. And I don't want to, oh, that's not no big deal, 20%. That means 80% aren't. But of those 20%, 60% of those are not going to be in business within 6 months. They're not going to be here because of the fines and the fees that come along with dealing with cleaning up a cyber attack. And as you can see here, 424% increase last year. And this is not going away anytime soon. It's just going to keep growing and growing and growing. And eventually, we are all going to be forced to deal with how we're going to protect our companies. Another mentality that kind of swells around small companies is small business owners is they think it's never going to happen to me, just going to happen to the neighbors, not me. So for the next little bit, if you could grab a piece of paper and a pen and just think about your specific organization right now in its current state and answer some of the following questions very frankly, right? We have to start somewhere, so let's at least get an idea as to where we are actually starting. So ask yourself this: do you have written policies for passwords, employee training, acceptable use, and physical security? So what does all that mean? So password management. So are you and your employees all just willy-nilly making up their own passwords, or do you have some kind of guidelines? Do they have to change them every 6 months, every month, anything like that? As far as the training goes, we just mentioned the phishing email. So phishing simulation email campaign would be a great way to see who's actually clicking on this stuff. And the acceptable use is just a nice little guideline that's going to say, I know that as an employee, I can't leave my workstation unattended. I can't be emailing things that are sensitive if they're not encrypted. All those kind of things that you really want to make sure that each employee is following, so that everyone is not leaving this up to their own, decisions as to what they should and shouldn't be doing. And then the physical security. Do all the employees know if somebody comes in and says, hey, by the way, I need to get access to this back room here. I'm from the water company or from the power company or something like that. Do people know, meaning have they been specifically told that they're not to let these people just wander around the building? That's something that sometimes we oversee that. Okay, again, right now in our current state of where we are, let's think about this for ourselves and for our employees. Does everybody know that somebody from IT or HR is not going to be calling them, asking them for their credentials, their passwords, access information? Because this is something that we do. We get a new employee, yay, Susan's going to be joining us. So we put it on social media, and then some Mr. Creepy Man, Mr. Scammer sees that, and then he calls up and he pretends he's calling from HR or IT, nice friendly conversation with Susan, welcoming her aboard and asking eventually in some of the questions for the credentials to get into the system. And if Susan doesn't know that someone's not going to be calling, then she might not think that that phone call is any big thing. And what about if you suspect a cyber attack? Does anybody have any clue what our employees would be doing? Is there going to be some kid in the back room on Twitter telling his 4,000 followers, hey, guess what? We're getting hacked at work right now, because that would be very bad. We don't want that to happen. And as far as everyone's emails and passwords, have they been involved in a data breach? This is a great website you can go to check, have I been pwned? And you can put your emails in there, you can put your passwords in there, and it'll tell you if they've been involved in a data breach. And why this is so important is because a lot of people use the same password and the same email, the username, and they for all their accounts. So if it was involved in a data breach, then and somebody gets their hands on that information, then they now know they can go plugging that in to all these different accounts and they can get access to them. So it's very important to make sure that if it has been involved, that you get a new email address and you start using a new password. All right, how are we verifying that an actual email or a phone call is coming from the actual client that the person is saying that they are, or a third-party vendor? Do we have any kind of verification process for verifying their identity and who this actually is? That's a good practice to get into, to come up with a system that you're double checking, or that there's some kind of a question that they have to answer, and then your employees have access to what the question is and what the answer is. So it's just a quick question that the client's going to remember, and it's a quick little thing that your employees can check, and then that way somebody can't call up and pretend that they're someone else. All right, you double verify that a request for a wire payment or a transfer is legitimate. This one is really scary because this can happen very easily. Here's an example. So Barbara Corcoran, Shark Tank, may know her. Her office manager received an invoice from a company in Germany that they were doing business with, and she went and paid it. And then she went and let Barbara's assistant know. And it turned out that the invoice was fake. The email address was off by one letter, and the IP address was a Chinese IP address. So the money was gone. And they had made the invoice look exactly like it had other invoices from that company. So they were able to get into the system, look at the communication that was going on, and then send a false one that really would have fit right in, and it got paid. So we want to make sure every time, even if it's someone we do business with all the time, we want to make sure we're verifying that it's actual real invoice and it's going where we think it's going. All right, know who should have access to confidential information and who should not. Is there a way that you can segment the access to the data? If somebody's job functions really only call for access to XYZ, do they really need to have access to get in and look at everything? If you can segment that, you're eliminating some of the risk associated with having someone who doesn't need all that access, has all that access. And again, do they know who should and shouldn't have access to the building? Like, for example, the cleaning people. This was a situation where there was a cybersecurity team getting together with a law firm, divorce lawyers, lots of dirt on people, and they were having a meeting on how they could make sure all of their connections were secure and all this stuff. And at the end of the meeting, door opens and in walks the cleaning crew. So one of the cyber experts says, "Well, who's this?" And they said, "That's the cleaning lady." And they said, "Well, what about all these files and everything that's all over the desks and everything? You just leave this here?" And they said, "Oh, we never thought about that. We never thought about somebody coming in and having access to all of the paper documents that we have. We were so concerned about somebody hacking into the system." So we need to worry about both, and we need to make sure that whoever does have access is supposed to be there. And we really shouldn't be leaving this stuff lying around anyway. All the documents should be locked up somewhere at the end of the day. Third-party platforms. This is becoming very popular for organizations to be using Google Drive, Google Docs, Slack, Basecamp, where everybody can go on and they can make whatever adjustments they need to a project they're working on. And the only issue with this, well, there's two things I want you to focus on, but you've got to make sure everybody that's in there has a very, very, very strong password for that system, because you are only as strong as the weakest password in your team. And a lot of people nowadays are working with virtual assistants. So these are people that are overseas, and we want to make sure that they have a very secure password for access to your information. And another thing that needs to happen too is whoever is creating these documents, they need to make sure that they are giving editing status to the owner of the company or the manager that the owner picks, so that way, even if you're just going to view it, the owner's only going to view this document, but you still need to have editing access for one reason. If down the road you want to get rid of that document or that whatever it is project you're working online, you won't be able to if you only have view only status. So you want to make sure that everybody gets in the habit, whenever they're starting a new document, project, whatever it is, the owner or a manager that the owner has picked has to have access, to edit that document, which also means to delete that document. What is your backup policy? Oh, we back up to the cloud. Okay, that's good. Doing something, backing up, you have to be backing up. You have to be backing up for one main reason, in addition to a lot of other reasons, but a ransomware attack. If you get a ransomware attack and you do not have a backup of your data, you are held hostage by the hackers. There's nothing you can do if they've locked up your data. So you want to make sure, number one, you are backing it up on a regular basis, as often as you can. And if it is with the cloud, automatically. And then know, where is it physically stored? Even if it's stored in the cloud, it's stored somewhere. And how does it look if you were able to get a copy of it? Have you ever seen a backup copy of the data? What does it look like? What format is it in? And have you ever tried to restore from that backup? So these are good things to think about and to say, where is the data? Have we ever seen what a backup looks like? And if we ever had to take everything from that backup to get ourselves back up and running, what would it look like? Would it be okay, or would it be a complete nightmare? Inventories. So these are some things that we should be thinking of. What kind of data do we have? What is it? Where is it? Is it physically stored? Is it digitally stored? Who has access to it? Are we tracking who has access to it? Same thing with the software, our software applications. Who has access to these things? And the hardware devices too. What do we even have out there? What does the company own? And what have we done with the ones we're no longer using? So hardware devices, here's a funny story. I was talking to a gentleman and he said the company that he works for, they hand out phones and laptops like chiclets. Everybody's got tons of them. And they just found out that a guy that hasn't worked for the company for 2 years has a phone and a laptop. So that's not good inventory management there when it comes to that. You want to make sure that nobody has access or devices to things that they shouldn't, especially if they're no longer with the company. What is your communication plan? Now, what this means is, let's say there's, like I mentioned, the kid on Twitter telling all his followers, let's say there's a suspicious something, or maybe there's actually something really happening. We want to make sure that all of the employees are all on the same page. So everybody isn't just left up to their own demise as to what they're doing, what they're announcing, all this. We have to have a communication plan that everyone's going to understand. And this isn't really complicated. This is just basically telling everybody, hey, listen, if we have a situation here, this is what you need to do. Put it in writing and then make sure that they know it. And then also a communication plan for how you're going to communicate on the outside if you do have a situation, which isn't what anybody really wants to think about, but you really do have to have some kind of plan as to how you're going to communicate with the clients that may have been affected, with the public, if it's going to be on the news. So good communication plan. Do you and all of your employees know what your company's social media policy is? Do you have a social media policy? This is a little example here of a little something that went awry with Walmart just a few weeks ago. And so this had to do with someone that working at Walmart did not agree with Hawley, who was going to not vote to support the electoral votes for Biden. So he put something on social media, and then somebody at Walmart in the social media department thought it would be a really great idea to throw out there and say, hey, you're a sore loser. And then this conversation continued back and forth. Nothing good comes of these things. So we want to make sure that your employees are not posting anything that somebody is going to launch an attack on your company for. And we're divisive enough right now as it is as a country. So let's not be poking the bear here with stuff like that. So let's get some kind of a social media agreement together. And then let's make sure everybody knows what it is. So you can't be posting things on behalf of the company if they're related to X, Y, and Z before you get yourself in a situation like this. Do the employees know that they should not be emailing sensitive information? A lot of people think email is safe, so they just fire it off, send it away, and that's not. So they need to make sure that if it's sensitive, it needs to be encrypted, and you should come up with some kind of plan for that. What's your confidentiality policy? What are the employees not allowed to talk about? And what are the employees not allowed to share should they no longer be working for the company? So if you have a nice confidentiality policy written down that they agree and that they sign, that they know what it is, they're going to abide by it. Making sure that no one is sharing their passwords. That's a good one. Not downloading anything onto their work computer that's not work related. And this, with nowadays, with the bring your own devices and everybody working from home, this is very muddied waters right here. So we really want to separate the work computer is the work computer, and The regular computer for your home, whatever you do, that's got to be kept separately. Really got to encourage that. And we need to make sure that employees know they are not supposed to just pick up a random USB and plug it into their computer and see what's on it, because that's another way that malware can be put into the computer. And a lot of hackers and scammers and cyber criminals, that's what they do. They put these viruses on the USB, they go lay them all over the place because they know people are going to pick them up and they know they're going to stick them in their computer. So that's not a good idea. And what if something happened tomorrow? Would anybody know what to do? Incident response plan sounds very fancy, but all it really is just a plan, like a fire drill. When we were kids, we had fire drills. We all knew where to go, what to do, who to look for. Incident response plan is the same thing. Who are we going to call? Do you have a 911 operator to call? Like, hello, we have a big situation here. What are we going to do? What's the plan while we're dealing with assessing the situation, and so on and so forth. So here's a little something to walk through and ask ourselves. Little scenario. It's Friday at 4 o'clock and your office manager is looking at her computer and the mouse is moving all over the place. And she's asking, so what's going on here? The mouse is clicking on files and emailing them off somewhere. She doesn't know what's going on. She's just sitting here watching this crazy. So she freezes for a moment. She doesn't know what to do. So she's going to call you. So she backs away from her computer and she tries to call you. Meanwhile, you're at the local bar ready to toast the weekend off. Woo, it's Friday. And she dumps this news on you. So what do you want to do? Well, what everybody wants to do is stick their head in the sand and pretend this never happened. This never happened. And that's what you cannot do. The chickens are coming home to roost sooner or later. So the more proactive you are with contacting the authorities and getting the ball rolling and trying to clean this mess up, the better off you're going to be. So you happen to remember, I think I'm supposed to contact the authorities and let them know because we've had a breach that has exposed some personal identifying information of our clients. So you contact the local police. They're not familiar with what to do, so they refer you to the FBI. So you contact the FBI, they ask you if you've stopped the breach, and you say, well, yeah, we unplugged the computer, we think it stopped. So they say, okay, well, we will see you at 9 a.m. on Friday. Have a good weekend. Monday morning, Mr. FBI shows up and you briefly describe what's happened to him, and he says he has a few questions. So you sit down, Mr. FBI's got his notepad and he's taking notes, and Miss FBI is asking the question, and this is what she's going to start with. Can you answer a few questions about how you were protecting the data before the breach? Now, this is when you're going to want to rewind time, change things, and put a plan in place, but can't do that. Can't do that. So what would you answer? Can you answer a few questions about how you were protecting your data before the data breach? So what do you say? The answer to follow is probably going to dictate whether or not you're going to be in business or not be in business in 6 months because of the fines and the fees that are going to be associated with how you were protecting it before. So then Mr. FBI asks if you're required to follow the FTC safeguard rule. Meanwhile, you're like, I don't even know what that is. But anyway, so the safeguard rule was put into place for financial institutions. They had to come up with, develop, and maintain a written plan for information security program. So that was required for financial institutions. It's also required for other companies as well, but it's just good business practices. That's really what it comes down to. And that's what we want to do. I mean, a good business practice is protecting your client's information. So these are some of the other people that fall underneath that the FTC safeguards rule. So if you're one of these people, you need to have the safeguards rule program in place. And like I mentioned, these are just good business practices for protecting your client's data. All right, then he's going to say, we're back to Mr. FBI. He's going to say, can you please show me all of your written policies to ensure that you and all of your employees are following these FTC safeguard rules? Then he's going to separate the employees and he's going to interview them individually. And he's going to ask them, what, if any, cybersecurity training have you had? What's the data protection company policy look like? And where can he find a written copy of it? So based on your current cybersecurity protocols, would you, A, feel like you had everything under control? B, think maybe you need a little bit of help fine-tuning your cybersecurity policies? Or C, suddenly wanting to pretend that you nor any of your employees speak English. So we developed Can You Answer Data Security? And it's a perfect little program for busy, small and medium-sized business owners, because we know that you guys are crazy busy doing a million different things and you don't have a lot of extra time or a lot of extra people or a lot of extra budget to dedicate to some of this. So what does what does the program not do? It does not talk techie, doesn't deal with network servers, network security, server configuration, antivirus or malware. We focus on people and creating a culture, getting the organization prepared to deal with today's data security issues. So remember, 95% of the issues are human error. So maybe we should start there. Let's talk about the people. And we have to always remember this when we're coming up with a security plan. It's a lot easier to trick an employee than it is to hack into the computer system. CYA Data Security is here to help. So why is it called CYA? Can you answer? Helps you CYA. It also can you answer. So now when the FBI shows up after a data breach and they ask, can you answer questions about how you were protecting the data before, you will be able to say, yes, we can, with your cybersecurity practices and your CYA toolkit, which I'll show you in a little bit. So what do? So we do an initial health score. We go around and we look at all these different areas that we've just kind of mentioned, and we figure out what are we doing and what are we not doing, and we come up with a score. Then we go and address the areas that maybe need a little attention, and we redo the test and we come up with a new score. The FTC safeguards rule, do you know what it is? Are you supposed to be implementing it and following it? Do you have written plans? And do your employees know what it is? Because that's another thing too. If you have written plans and nobody knows about these plans and your employees aren't acting upon or following any of these plans, that doesn't count. So your data. What personal data is your company holding on to? Where is it stored? Who has access to this? And how would you, again, the ransomware, how would you access the data in the event of a ransomware attack? Employee training. We mentioned the phishing is the biggest way that this malware is getting sent in, and everybody's opening these emails because they look really, really good nowadays. They look like they're from FedEx or Amazon or an actual invoice. So we really need to stop and teach our employees, what do you need to look for when it comes to this stuff? Social engineering. So what is that? That's when you're pretending to be somebody else. So I just did a poll the other day about the gift card scam, and I was actually very surprised at how many people don't know what the gift card scam is. So to briefly explain, basically what it is it's an email that will look like it's from the boss, and it will ask the employee, listen, I'm in a rush, and can you do me a favor and run out and get some gift cards and read off the back of the numbers to me, and then when you get back to the office, I'll reimburse you. I have a presentation and I need to give these away as little freebies. So what happens is a lot of the time the employee thinks, oh, I got to do this. My boss is asking me this. So they act upon it without even thinking. So that's a form of social engineering. We want to teach everybody when somebody is saying it's got to happen now, there's a rush, we need to stop and think, is this really how my boss would be communicating with me? Would my boss be communicating with me to go get gift cards? Things like that we're not thinking clearly when we're in that whole rush, I got to go help the boss out kind of thing. Reviewing USB guidelines. We don't want anybody picking up a random USB and sticking it into their work computer. Incident response plan, okay? In writing, what are we doing? Who are we going to contact if we have a suspected attack? Do we have anybody to contact? I do. Employees' roles during the cyber attack. What is everybody supposed to be doing from the time that anybody suspects something's going on, during it, and up until afterwards? And that ties into the communication rules. Internal communication within the organization and external communication for the reputational damage, and who's going to be the one that's going to be delivering that. Data protection policies, written policies explaining how are you protecting the data. You probably know how you are now, so let's just put it in writing and make sure everybody is following it. Workstation and smartphone cleanup. We're going to go through, do a little tidying up there, make sure everybody isn't just logged into their Google account all the time on their work desktop or the workstation. And if they're using their phones for work, they really should go through those just as well and have a passcode on there so the phone is locked. We don't want anybody going and finding somebody's phone if they lose it and having access to all of your work stuff. Okay, so just to reiterate, we have the health check, the FTC safeguard rules, and someone is going to be specifically assigned from your company to be the person, the coordinator. Written plans, data inventories, backup procedures, employee training with sign-off sheets, and incident response plan. So this is the best part. You ready? So we're going to take all that information, and this is what we're going to do. You get one of these, this handy dandy little box that's locked. Also has all your stuff in there, nice and neat. So not only are you now operating a lot more organized with some order and some cybersecurity measures in place, data protection measures in place, you're also going to have it all in here so that if something should happen and you need to explain to somebody and show them what you were doing before your data breach, you are going to have quite a bit of stuff to show somebody. You'll have the employee sign-offs, you'll have all of the policies, procedures, what you've done, and that's going to be a much different conversation with the FBI, because now you're clearly, if you have this and it's all complete and everybody knows about it and they interview the employees and everybody can say that, yes, they know about this, they are familiar with this, the conversation that you're going to have with the FBI is much, much, much better than it would be if you didn't have any of this stuff in place. Because if they ask you what you were doing and you just say, nothing, we thought we were safe, that doesn't fly. It doesn't fly. But when you can show them something like this, and you really, in good faith, you had good practices in place, you were doing things, trying to follow things, and the data breach happened anyway, that's probably going to make the difference between whether you're going to be in business in 6 months or not going to be in business in 6 months. So a little bit scary, but that's the variance. Like we mentioned before, a lot of small businesses don't think that they are a target. They definitely are a target, definitely. And again, because the cyber criminals know that these small companies don't have a robust IT department, they're not using the best equipment, and they don't have a fancy, company to, right, that was it, yeah, they don't have a fancy company to come save the day afterwards. So they know all this stuff. Nothing is robust, everything is small, and they don't have a big budget. That's what it was. It was in the budget. They don't have a big budget to deal with this stuff. So are you ready for a cyber attack? If you really were going to ask yourself, I know it's a very scary question, but so 86% of the businesses rate their mitigation system cyber risks not effective. 86%. 91% of small businesses do not have cyber liability insurance. And there was a 424% increase. Remember, we mentioned this number earlier on in the presentation over last year for the number of crimes committed against small businesses. So it's not going away. It's really not going away. And the sooner that we all start to deal with it, and the sooner we all start the conversation and creating that cultural awareness, the more the employees and you are thinking about this, the easier it's going to be to implement a plan and to help get everybody protected. So if you would like to apply to work with our program, here it is. You can go to identityprotectionplanning.com/apply, and me or a member of my team will be calling you, and we'll discuss what's your current situation. We'll see if we're a fit for you, and we'll see if you're a fit for us, right? And we have very limited openings right now because we can only work with 20 companies. So if you are interested, I would highly suggest that you apply now, as soon as you possibly can. Like we said, this isn't going away anytime soon, and we have a way to quickly and efficiently put a plan together that's specifically tailored to your organization so that you know that you will be nice and protected and have peace of mind that should something happen, you'll be able to say, we can CYA. So that's it. If you want to apply, there's the website again. I really appreciate your time and look forward to hearing from you. Bye-bye.